I would like to move House File 1503 to be laid over.
Representative Burkle, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to, if possible, could we move the A1 amendment right away? Get the bill in shape.
Well, yeah. We'll move the A1 amendment. Is that your wish,
Yeah, I'd like to
Representative?
move the A1 amendment.
Okay. Any member comments on the A1 author's amendment?
Very simple amendment. Line 12, just need to clean up some language that a lobbyist not to be named missed when the bill was drafted. And line on page 2, delete the enactment date. So that's the amendment.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. The A1 is approved.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the bill itself, as you all know, state of Minnesota and the country has struggled with high-path avian influenza, and this bill just establishes a program to award grants to poultry producers to install prevention measures on the farm. And with that, just to move things along quickly, I have a testifier. I'd like to just go right to the testifier, and we can move it along.
Welcome. Identify yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Coles, and I serve Minnesota's turkey industry as the Executive Director for the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association. As you guys all know, last week was Poultry Day at the Capitol. Minnesota is the number one turkey producing state in the nation, raising nearly 40 million turkeys annually and contributing significantly to our state's economy and rural communities. I'm here today in strong support of House File 1503, which establishes a grant program to assist producers with cost of wild bird deterrence on farms. Turkey growers in Minnesota have set the gold standard for biosecurity and prevention measures on turkey farms. And this can be displayed when you look at the number of farms impacted by high-path avian influenza, turkey farms impacted by high-path avian influenza in Minnesota versus the national numbers. So if you go back to 2022, there was roughly 57 million birds nationally impacted. Minnesota had about 4 million turkeys. In 2023, 21 million birds nationally, 1.1 million turkeys in Minnesota. And in 2024, back up to 50 million birds annually, and Minnesota reduced even further to just right around 1 million. So Minnesota turkey growers are doing a lot, but biosecurity is not enough to prevent high-path avian influenza infections. Additional layers of protection are also necessary to reduce the risk of exposure to commercial turkeys. And so bird deterrents, like turkey lasers, I think we testified on this bill last year. There was a lot of talk about turkey lasers. I think, Mark, are they supposed to have pictures? Do you have pictures for them? There's an example of what a turkey laser looks like. So there's a lot of confusion, and we still get a lot of questions about what these turkey lasers actually look like and how they work. So the picture that you have in front of you is a turkey laser installed on a commercial turkey farm. And so you can only see one laser, but a barn, a typical commercial turkey barn will have 2 of them, one on each end. As you can see, there's a grain bin right next to the barn, which does block the laser from hitting the ground in some places, so that's why you need 2 in order to be able to surround the barn completely. And so how these lasers work is they move continually, and they move very slowly. And if I had a video, I would show you, but they move very slowly, and this isn't an exaggeration on how fast they move. And the green light, there's a magic behind the green light, they say, that birds are scared of the green light specifically, which is why the light is green. And the laser moves in a randomized pattern to prevent birds from landing on or flying near, and in a lot of cases, from what we see, flying over turkey barns specifically. This is also not a novel technology. This is the same technology that airports use to keep birds off of runways. Vineyards and orchards also use them to keep birds off of their trees and their berry bushes. Since 2023, Minnesota turkey growers have installed over 100 lasers on their farms. So we're contributing that to some of the reduction of impact of high path on turkey farms in the state. While some of those predate last year's grant, there were a number of them who took advantage, a number of growers who took advantage of the HPI prevention grants and grants like that in the past year. I think that's all that I have. I just want to say thank you again for hearing this bill today. Thank you, Representative Burkle, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Coles, I would ask the first question. You said this has been installed on about 100 farms or barns. So has the success rate been good?
Yeah, so it's 100 lasers, so it's not necessarily 100 barns,
Okay,
right? So there's,
okay.
for most barns, it requires 2 lasers in order to be successful.
Okay.
And so from the folks who have installed, and I wish we could have gotten a gentleman here from the southeast corner who's seen a lot of success, but, you know, from the folks who install these lasers, they're not breaking with high-path avian influenza, and they're actually seeing a change in bird patterns. And there's one guy, I think, who last week was here, and we're talking about the lasers he installed on his barn, that they want their neighbors to get them too, because the birds are landing on their turkey barn now instead of his after he installed his lasers. And so, you know, just for justification for this grant, there are a lot of folks who would like to install these lasers because they're seeing success and hearing success from their neighbors, but they are cost prohibitive, which is justification for the grant. One laser costs roughly $17,000 to $20,000 per laser because we are competing with airports and the like, and if they require 2 per barn, it's a significant capital purchase for these folks. And so I guess that's just further justification for a grant like this to help folks just layer on, again, another layer of protection in addition to robust biosecurity.
Have another question from Representative Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question to perhaps Representative Burkle of how much of the funding you think you're thinking about. I know that we designated funding for turkey lasers last biennium in the last cycle, and I know that there's probably lots of federal funding coming. So I'm curious to see how much more funding do you think this program will be needed?
Representative Burkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Vang, for that number. I believe, Bruce, could you come up? I believe last year's number is in the 300,000 range, but I want to check with Bruce for sure.
Welcome, identify yourself and proceed.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Bruce Clavin, I represent the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association. And we put in blank funding here pending the forecast tomorrow and how your committee budget comes together. Part of the reason this was blank is the department rolled this into a livestock disease prevention program last year, and it was part of a package. And so when we rejacketed the bill, it was to introduce it to the committee again this year. And no funding really set for it until we see what the targets are.
Okay.
That was our thought process anyway.
Any follow-ups, Representative Vang?
Yeah, I just wanted you guys to hone in on how much funding do you guys think you'll need to, I guess, address the need? Because considering there's going to be lots of federal funds, there's already funding currently already. So how much more money do you guys think you'll need?
Representative Burkle.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. Representative Vang, I would say as much as we could possibly get to mitigate the problem in front of us. I think we've all seen in the last year the impact of avian influenza on the industry, especially in the layer industry, and I'd like to see this program expanded as much as possible in Minnesota just to mitigate the issue in the state.
Can I follow up on that? Can I make
Actually,
Ms. Coles, go ahead.
Yeah, so just as a follow-up to the specificity to the federal funding that was currently rolled out by Secretary Rollins in the past 10 days or so, there is some specificity to that money for egg layers, right? So there's currently not a carve-out in that for turkey currently. We're working on getting some clarification as to see if the turkey industry does qualify for some of those dollars, but as of right now, they are solely focused on the egg layers.
Yeah, I was going to mention that also. That's what my take of that too so far. It's to bring down the price of eggs. Anything else, Representative Vang?
No, that'll be all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. Representative Burkle, further comments? We have a couple of amendments to get to. How do you want to proceed with those?
Let's proceed with the amendments, Mr. Chair.
We have the A2, I believe that's Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Burkle. When we had the previous testimony last week with the Board of Animal Health, there was a discussion about the movement of raw pet food from poultry or livestock that were potentially had been culled. So this would ban that sale and distribution, an explicit ban. The bill 1503 is described as an avian influenza prevention program. So this would, I believe, fall under that title and in the clauses. So it helps prevent the spread that has been occurring from raw pet food.
Representative Burkle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Representative Anderson would clarify, his understanding of cult, because I'm curious as to how he's come up with this amendment.
Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Burkle. Those would be ones with depopulation programs. I realize that most of those are composted, but obviously something got through the system. So when there's a depopulation and there's culling, I am not talking about normal culling of cows, but if there is a positive high-path avian influenza that is occurring and you are depopulating turkeys, chickens, or other livestock, then that pet food, that raw meat would not be made into pet food to be distributed.
Representative Burkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Hanson. I guess I fail to understand the logic of the amendment, other than, I mean, from my own experience, just knowing what culled birds, what happens when you compost culled birds. They, you know, on a quarantine farm, there's no avenue for that product to be in pet food. So that confuses me. But beyond that, it's really, technically, this would be an FDA issue, a food safety issue at FDA, not necessarily part of MDA, unless MDA would like to comment on that. But in my mind, this is a federal FDA issue.
Representative Hanson.
Mr. Chair and Representative Burkle, actually, the Department of Ag does deal with pet food regulation, and I believe this is a simple requirement. Obviously, something got through. We had that testimony in this committee where the likelihood of raw pet food, and that the Board of Animal Health testified that they did not have that explicit authority for banning it. So I would move the A2 and ask for a roll call.
An A2 has been, A2 roll call vote has been requested, and the clerk will take the roll.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Representative Lawrence.
If I may, thank you. Mr. Chair, Representative Hanson has brought into the comment from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture on their role in this, and I guess I was curious if they would mind commenting before we vote on this. That'd be,
If they are still here,
Mr. Chair, thank you.
yes. Introduce yourself and proceed.
Yes, Chair Anderson, Committee, thank you. For the record, my name is Michelle Medina, and I serve as the Director of Government Relations for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. So when we detect high path on a farm, those animals are culled per the USDA, so they become USDA property. They're not allowed to enter the food stream. We do follow FDA guidance for our commercial feed and food division program that we have, but also high path is considered an adulteration. Adulterated food is not allowed into the food supply. That is both human and pet food. So any high path positive animals are not allowed already per state and federal regulation to enter the food supply.
Okay, thank you very much. Roll call has been asked. The clerk will take a roll. The chair votes no.
Representative Harder? No. Representative Hanson?
Yes.
Representative Smith?
Yes.
Representative Agbaje?
Yes.
Representative Burkle?
No.
Representative Frederick? Yes. Representative Gander?
No.
Representative Jacob?
No.
Representative Lawrence?
Lawrence votes no.
Representative Lee?
Yes.
Representative Nelson?
No.
Representative Vang?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-6, the amendment does not pass. We now have the A3. Again, Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the A3 amendment. The A3 amendment, again, we're under the heading of Avian Influenza Prevention Program. The bill 1503, as it stands, assumes that the only transmission would be from wild birds to domestic poultry. And so it provides for devices on that assumption. What the A3 amendment does is inserts money with the University of Minnesota to monitor manure, compost, and air quality. There has been recent publications that one of the sources of transmission may be manure. And so it gets in the air, moves, and a laser isn't going to stop that. The commissioner would coordinate with the Board of Regents to monitor wastewater treatment systems for the presence of avian influenza. The commissioner must provide personal protective equipment for agricultural workers, farm workers, poultry and livestock processors, processing employees, and provide biomonitoring for the presence of avian influenza in those agricultural workers, farm workers, or poultry and livestock processing employees that volunteer. So a voluntary biomonitoring program to see if the virus or if the disease is being brought into human population. And then it says, if there are federal dollars that come to the State Department of Agriculture for biosecurity, that they be distributed through a randomized process rather than a first come, first serve. We have seen, and I think former Chair Vang would note that on prior grants, when there's first come, first serve, those that are ready, maybe the larger ones that have the ability or staff to apply for those grants. So the randomized money, if that is applicable for the state. Then when we get to page 2, these appropriations with the dollar figures are based on appropriations that were provided previously to the University of Minnesota for COVID monitoring. That initial creative research was nation leading. You know, many of us have probably seen the COVID monitoring in wastewater. That actually started with a research at the University of Minnesota that was an emergency grant from the Legislative and Citizens Commission on Minnesota Resources on March 17th, 2020, almost 5 years ago. So using those same appropriations, we'd look at wastewater, drinking water treatment, and then also public water and private wells to see if there is contamination of avian influenza in the water. So I'd ask for your support and a roll call.
Thank you, Representative Hansen. I would say this is a pretty sizable amendment. It gets into a lot of cost and a lot of mandates. Had you discussed this with Representative Burkle prior to this?
Mr. Chair, I did not discuss this with Representative Burkle. We have had a very limited time in the minority here. I anticipate that in the near future, we may be at an equal number. My purpose in this is getting these topics out here. It's a lot faster to draft an amendment than it is to get a bill drafted in this current environment. And so I think these are important factors to have that hearing and get it out here. My understanding is the bill is being laid over. I think these are important topics that we should consider, hopefully equally in the near future.
Representative Burkle, it's your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Hansen. It is a pretty extensive amendment. Looks more like the workings of maybe a bill you should draft at some point down the road. I would request everyone vote no simply because it is that extensive, and what we're really trying to do here is alleviate some of the stress for the farm and the folks on the farm that are dealing with the financial and emotional stress of dealing with high-path avian influenza and trying to prevent that. I do have a question about, as far as the manure composting air quality situation, it seems like something that belongs at MPCA. And the Department of Health is already monitoring wastewater. I guess this really should be a bill, Representative Hansen, at some point. Providing PPE, I could tell you from firsthand experience back in 2015 when I broke with high-path AI that PPE was provided, biomonitoring was provided. I was called daily, as was my son, to check into our health situation, see if we had any signs, symptoms of any kind of influenza, and even got a prescription to Tamiflu. So kind of redundant there. I guess as extensive as the amendment is, and maybe Department of Ag would like to speak to it at some level, but I'd ask members to vote no.
Commissioner Peterson is getting up and coming on over. Welcome back, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members, Tom Peterson, Commissioner. Yeah, just a few comments. I think Representative Burkle and sorry, Representative Hansen too, haven't had a chance to visit with you about this. And it is really, really important issue. And just a few thoughts. I think that on the wastewater and the, we'd probably prefer working with the MPCA on that rather than the Board of Regents, just because of what they're, or the manure with that in the Department of Health on wastewater. I did want to say, though, on line C, want to make it very clear, the Department of Health is here in the audience too, that they do make PPE available for farmers. So, goggles are the really important thing, because one of the things we've seen in the human health cases is conjunctivitis, masks, gloves, all of that. Your farmers in your district, if they want to, we have the link right on our website where farmers can go and apply. And Department of Health's been a great partner in this. And so also in the testing that goes through, and we have a positive farm, we did have, not just we've been doing this on poultry all along, or the Department of Health has, but also on the dairy farms this summer that we offer testing. We get a lot picked up. But we also want, legislators to know that farmers in your district can get the free PPE. And Minnesota, I think, has had the best uptake of any state in the nation on their supplies to help the workers too and everything. And so the other thing I would just mention is the federal funds, we're going to kind of see, as Ms. Cole said, this was just rolled out last week. It is my concern too, is we do have layers in our state, but not like some other states. Our big industry is obviously the turkey industry, and this is highly focused on eggs and egg prices. So as commissioner, I've been advocating for this also to go into turkeys as well. So just a few comments, and appreciate, glad to keep working on this because it is an important issue.
Thanks, Commissioner Peterson. Final thoughts, Representative Burkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just would ask members to vote no on the amendment, and you can take the roll.
Representative Hansen, your final thoughts.
Mr. Chair, my intent here was to get these topics out here. Do I have your commitment that you will continue to work with our side on these topics?
Yes, you do. Yep.
And we will withdraw the amendment.
Okay. The A3 amendment has been withdrawn, and now to the bill, House File 1503. Any final comments from members? Seeing none, Representative Burkle, you get the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just appreciate the hearing today. Appreciate Representative Hansen's comments and his amendment, understanding what he's trying to do there, but really feel that this bill addresses a situation really on the ground with farmers that are really dealing with a financial stress and an emotional stress that, and we've all seen what avian influenza can do to our poultry industry. So with that, I'd appreciate a yes vote on the bill. Or no, we're laying this over. Sorry.
Actually, yes, the bill will be laid over. So House File 1503 is laid over. Thank you, Representative Burkle. Thank you to committee members.